This problem says solve the quadratic equation by using the square root property. The square root property basically says if you have something squared, and let's make an easy number, all you have to do is square root it. Because square rooting a square cancels it out, so you just be left with the x. However, because it's an x squared, there should be two answers. So most people are like, the square root of 9, that's just 3. Yeah. That's because 3 squared is 9. But negative 3 squared, that's a negative 3 times a negative 3, and that too is a 9. So there's actually two possible values for x. If you take either one of those numbers and square it, you'll get 9. If an equation has a squared in it, if it's a quadratic, which means the highest exponent is an x squared, there should be two possible answers. Now, occasionally you only get one possible answer if you have a perfect square trinomial. That won't be the case here. The square root property only works when you have just an x squared. Normally you have like a something x squared and a something x and a something equals 0. And then you try to factor it or use the quadratic formula or you complete the square. But when this guy is missing and you just have the x squared guy, you can use the square root property. And since on this particular problem, our squared is isolated on the left, it's an entire x minus 5, but it is something that's being squared. So I can take my x minus 5 squared, which is equal to 16, and square root it. The square root and the squared cancel out. And when they do, you will just be left with the x minus 5. That's all I'm going to be left with. However, on the other side, the square root of 16 is 4, but it could be a positive 4 or a negative 4. Just like over here, we could have had a positive 3 or a negative 3. And it is at this point you must split it into two equations. You have to take the x minus 5 and set it equal to, let's get a color here, the positive value of the 4 right here, positive 4. Or you take the x minus 5 and set it equal to the negative of the 4. And that's what will go right here. And that's how you're going to get two answers. Each one of these, if you solve for x, you would add 5 to cancel it out. But this first one, you'll be adding 5 to a positive 4, which will give you an answer of 9. Boom. And here, when you also add 5 to get x by itself, you'll be adding a 5 to a negative 4, which will give you a positive 1. This does say to type exact answers. So if this thing right here, if that had not been a perfect square, like maybe it was the square root of 15, you'd have to leave it in radical form. Wouldn't that be fun? And simplify your radical. I don't know if somebody's going to get one of those or not, or if everybody gets a nice, pretty, perfect square there. I'm going to go back to Mobius. And it does say right here, and a lot of times people miss this, list your numbers separated by semicolons. If you put commas in here, if I put 9 comma, was it negative 1? Boy, my brain just doesn't remember anything. Positive 1. Positive 1. Get rid of that negative sign. If I use a comma and hit how did I do, it tells me it's wrong. For some reason, Mobius really wants a semicolon. So, bam, there's my semicolon. And now, How did I do? Oh, look at that lovely green color. So make sure you put a semicolon in between your answers, not a comma.